I'd like to call to order the March Finance Committee meeting. I know that most of you are here for the blockchain or Bitcoin discussion to come later. So you really get two wonderful things in one day, a Bitcoin discussion and a Finance Committee meeting. So brace yourself. There are copies of the agenda in front of the room here. Any of you would like to get one. The meeting starts with a roll call.
Councilor Kelly?
Here.
Councilor Fiscal?
He will be here in just a minute.
Councilor Armstrong?
Here.
Councilor Dowell?
Here.
Councilor McFarland?
Yeah.
Councilor President?
Here.
Thank you. At this time, we would invite any members of the public to come speak to us about any finance issues you might want to talk about, anything on today's agenda.
I didn't look at the agenda. Is this including the Bitcoin issue? Or is
No, this is just our March Finance Committee meeting. The agenda is the next item on the agenda, so that's our 2017 budget results. That's our 2018 budget results year to date, and then an update of the council's 5-year plan since our February meeting, and discussion of revenue generation versus cost cutting. So, without further ado, let's start the first item, which is our 2017 budget results. I asked Richard Marks last week before he went on vacation to prepare some reports for us, and he did that. But I'm so glad Carol's here to answer any questions I might not be able to. So thank you for coming today. Well, we'll be looking at them for the first time here. Well, I've actually looked at them before. So we're going to pull the first one up on the screen, if you don't mind, Brian, which is our 2017 budget results. Okay. Yes, that's the one. Okay. We've seen this a couple of times in iterations, but as we get closer to a final number for 2017 for expenditures and revenues, I just want to keep you abreast of the latest thinking on what our fund balance is going to be and other items along the way. So we can see that for the general fund, our revenues, this doesn't look right. I guess it is, but our revenues, okay, our revenues were higher than budgeted. Our budgeted revenues are way over to the right, you can see, and then our actual revenues were higher than budgeted. Our expenditures were a little higher than budgeted also, but we ended up with a net result of 271, 169.38. Now, somehow that doesn't look right. Brian, do you mind if I? Yeah, 2017 stuff. I think, Councilor, that is about right. Remember,
that in the original mayor's budget from 2016, which the council approved in early 2017, there were a lot of unanticipated items like, for instance, the arbitration for the firefighters.
Yes.
That we did incur.
Yes.
And pushed your expenses up by much more than you thought. And then you actually streamlined and did a nice job with expenditures in 2017 that then brought that sum down to what it could have been.
Yes.
So you ended up still with a net loss at the end of the year of around $300,000, which eroded almost or most of the fund balance at that time.
Yes, that net loss is reflective of the fact that we put aside a very large sum of money for the firefighter arbitration settlement in advance. So we actually have a slight fund balance this year. Now, one thing I want to point out is people ask, well, all that consolidation you did last year, how did that pay off for the city? And I'd like to point out to you that if you look at the next line on that report, the rec complex, you can see that we actually turned small profit in the rec complex in 2017. So that is the first time in my experience as a counselor that that's ever happened. The rec complex has always been a loss for the city each year.
I believe we also paid off a long-standing running debt with the rec complex too.
That's right, we wrote up $180,000
Yeah.
for recall.
Which, that factors into that number, I think.
Yeah, so, as I said, for the first time in my experience, the rec complex actually made money, and that's because it was consolidated into community development and cost a lot more. If you look at the revenues, there we got 1.1 million budgeted. If you look at the actual revenues, it was 1.19, so a little bit better. The expenditures were very close also, but the fact that we have a net profit indicates that our plan of consolidation worked, at least for that particular department. We did manage to save some money. So that was good news. You can look at the top of that chart and see that each of our departments met its goals for budgeting and revenue. The one exception there is the water department, but fortunately their revenues were higher than their expenses. So sewer also was a little higher than expenses, but I would say overall we had a fairly good year. Now keep bringing this to your attention each month because this is sort of a moving target until the final figures are here. We anticipate some additional revenue from the ambulance building. And Carol, are you aware of any other revenues we might expect?
We have a little bit of, just a little bit, $40,000 from end of year tax reserve adjustment. Finished the ambulance yet, so I can't tell you whether it's going to be an up or down. That is true.
Okay. Okay,
We
thank
got
you.
the final, actually got the final numbers.
Okay.
Department, and I'll be working on it tomorrow. Hopefully that will.
Okay.
Do we have any expenditures still out against 2017?
Not that I am aware. Not that I'm aware. We shut down AP, so we got all of our, chargebacks to the other funds, and I think
Does anyone have any other questions about 2017 before we move on?
Are you asking the public?
No. Save those questions till after the meeting. We'll chat. Okay, 2018. So 2018 year to date, it's hard to tell exactly what has or has not been spent this year because the year is so new. But I wouldn't be too concerned about the lower revenues and the higher expenditures at this point. It's just too early to tell. Now, at our next meeting in April, we will have the results of the first quarter of the year, and at that time, we will have some basis to determine what the remainder of the year is going to look like. I will say this, that we have a lot of work to do, and we made some significant cuts in expenditures last year, and we need to do the same thing again in this year. So let's anticipate that.
Do you happen to have January 2017? I think you did that the last time.
Yep, that's below. Brian, would you just drop down and show 2016's January numbers? Oh. Okay. Is that what you were asking about?
2017 versus 2018.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Oh.
I was just wanted to compare 20
Oh,
January
okay, yeah, I don't have that
17
chart
and
here.
18. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Back to 2018.
It's January 2017 then.
Oh, okay, 2017. So you can see it kind of looks the same.
Mike, the thing to remember, we adjust that for the receivables.
Yeah.
So what you're not seeing, especially in the general fund, is it's adjusted, if we left receivables in, for example, for tax receivables, it would be almost balanced, but we adjusted almost the cash balance to what we received, so we really don't start receiving tax payments until March.
Until
So
March,
that's when you
correct.
see it. And the
That-
same thing with parking.
Right, that's why we don't
That's
see
why the
the
revenue is.
revenue so
Right.
even. Okay, good explanation, Carol.
Mostly on cash. That part is never
Okay, thank you. Thank you. In March, or in April, we will have our, as I said, our first quarter results. And that will put us in a good place to start to update our 5-year plan, which we should have done by June 1st. We will begin working on that immediately after our next finance meeting in April. So that gives us plenty of time to get ready for that. And with that, if we could go ahead to the 5-year plan. Okay. And Brian, would you make that as large as it can be so that we can see all the significant data, please? Oh, that's good. Okay, so you guys, by now, I want to make sure we have the right version of this. This is version 17. Okay.
Yes.
This is V12.
Okay, V17 is on the desktop.
That's the one we're looking at.
Okay, could you put up V17, please?
That's the one we put on there, V12.
Okay. Okay, well, sorry about that. I don't have it here, we'll have to do something else. Yes. Yes. Okay, you can put up B12, okay?
It's up.
Okay. I don't know what I did. Sorry about this, folks.
Flash drive still in GC, it's on the flash drive.
Oh,
Okay. March, Okay, do the same thing to that, and make it more usable. Do without directions. Okay.
Okay. Right, go a little bit farther to the left.
Yes, it's up to you.
There you go. Beth made copies of this for you, so you follow along on paper or on the screen, but. You did it? Somebody has copies?
I do.
Oh, Dale, okay, Dale, that's okay. It's okay. All right, so as we start to think about updating this for 2018 forward, then there are a couple things I want you to keep in mind. Richard Marks took the latest version of this and updated it with our 2017 figures, the ones we looked at earlier. And so this should be pretty accurate for 27-18 revenue and expenditures. It shows us with a slight negative fund balance, that $384,000 figure at the bottom there. Was deficit spending. However, as I said earlier, we managed to put aside a lot of money for the firefighter arbitration, so that we actually have a slight positive fund balance of $263,958. This is the first time in 6 years that our city government has ended the year in black, and I think that's a testimonial to the council, mayor, and all the department heads who helped make that happen last year. So congratulations to all of you. We have plans, as you know, to try to repeat that performance this year. We're shooting for a fund balance at the end of the year to total about $800,000. Next year, $1.5 million. So those are all ambitious, but we have a plan before us, and we can do that.
Mike,
Yes.
I know that we did set aside the $779,000 for the, in 2017 for the firemen's arbitration.
Yes.
Which does leave us with that fund balance. But that has not been carried over or calculated into 2018, correct? Because it's still.
That is correct. You can see that in 2019, we have a similar large amount, Peter. That $70,000 in between there is the amount that we think we'll have to pay in raises for interest. In interest for the arbitration. So, does that make sense? Sure. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'd just like to point out a couple things here. We demonstrated at our last meeting that we can't tax our way out of this situation. We determined that we could tax at 11.3% for several years there, and then we'll hit the state constitutionally mandated tax cap. And we won't be allowed to tax anymore. We'll have a 0% tax rate. At that point, our fund balance would start to drop dramatically, and we would end up in a very bad financial situation. So we can't tax our way out of it. Recently, some people said, well, can't you raise revenue? Well, yes, we can raise revenue, but let's take an example of the refuse collection. Refuse collection is a moneymaker for the city. It generates some revenue, as you know, but we clear about $60,000 a year with trash collection. Now, if you think of all the inputs that go into that, the labor and the equipment, if we decided to replicate that effort and come up with another $60,000, we would have to have a tremendous amount of capital to do that, and we just simply don't have it. So we managed through aggressive cost cutting last year to cut nearly $2 million out of our budget. And how many refuse projects or similar projects that are creating $60,000 in revenue would you have to have in order to get that $2 million? Think about that. You would need 12 refuse projects or more. So revenue is a great thing. We do want to try to increase revenue. Take the ambulances, for example. That was a good thing to have happen, to figure out how to get more money from that operation. But we simply do not have the capital to invest to create a lot of revenue generating projects. You take the marina. Marina makes about, someone told me, $18,000 a year. It costs about $1 million to $900,000 to build the marina. In 50 years, we'll recover the public's money that went into that. It's not a great investment. So if we can't tax our way out of this, and we can't generate enough revenue to offset the increase in operations, then what do we have left? We have more cost cutting to do. That's the only practical thing I can see. So if you look at the year 2019 down near the bottom, we're looking to cut $1 million. And I don't think that we've ever really discussed this before, but where's that $1 million going to come from? We're all afraid to discuss that. We have to decrease the size of our government. That's what we have to do. It won't come from anywhere else. And that means jobs, that means payrolls, that means things that are very near and dear to people and very emotional. But that's where we stand now. We can do this in a couple of ways. We can do it through attrition, which is the least painful way for everybody. If our employees decide to retire along the way, then each one of those retirements can be worth up to $100,000 if you include benefits. So retirements for our senior people who are ready, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Of course, the other way to do it is with attrition. Someone leaves a position and you don't fill it. That would be the hope. So there are ways to do that. But then the third way is a really painful way, and that's to reduce the size of our workforce. And those are the kinds of things that, unfortunately, we need to think about. I have a statistic for you that might help think your way through this. In 1960, the population of Plattsburgh was about 20,000 people. In 2018, the population of Plattsburgh was about 20,000 people. So we've been flat for decades in terms of our tax base and our population, but yet our city government has grown and grown. Now, there's no way I would suggest we go back to the staffing levels we had in 1960. Herb Carpenter, the former police chief, told me we had 9 officers in 1960. I can't imagine the city being with that few officers today, but there is some happy medium. Perhaps the police force is too large. That's what the public always tells us. Perhaps the fire department, perhaps each of our departments could be right-sized to a level that we can afford. And that's what we're after here, sustainability. If we can get our spending under control such that our population of 20,000 and our tax base of 20,000 can sustain and support city operations, then we'll be in good shape. Right now, we wonder why we can't afford things like street repairs. Why do we have such terrible streets in the city of Plattsburgh? That's something our taxpayers ask all the time. Well, the answer is we're paying tremendous payrolls. We don't have any money left over for street repairs. So that's something that, it has to be adjusted. It's not a pleasant thing to do. It's a painful thing to do. But that's something we must think about as we go forward. One other thing I want to mention about the budget, and that is that we've made an assumption all along that our expenses will inflate by 2.5% per year. If you look up at the top of the chart, cell K4, K3, K4, I can't tell. But 2.5% is our expected inflation of expenses over the next several years. That could go up. Okay. As council is trying to manage our financial situation, we have to keep that in mind and watch that very closely. Another thing that we need to watch very closely, next line down, property tax increases. 2018, we're expecting 1.84% increase in taxes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What was the actual rate of amount of inflation for 2017?
For the actual inflation for 2017? It's close to zero.
Okay.
Right
So
now,
then
close to zero.
why are we extrapolating out at 250?
Because economic indicators say that inflation will increase over the next several years.
Okay.
So that's why we say that. And
What economic indicators, like cost of living, what sources are consulted?
economists and
Yeah,
people
okay.
who make those kind of projections say that.
What was the projection for 17?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know.
You mentioned that it could go up, but also go up, not at 2.5%.
That is very true, Peter. Again, that's something we need to watch that will influence our five-year planning. So we need to keep an eye on those factors. The next one, as I said, is the property tax increase of, we're thinking 1.84%. If that doesn't pan out, then that's less revenue. That means more expense cutting. Does that make sense?
That's quite a bit higher than 0.7 we realized in 2017.
Yeah.
The average growth rate of the property tax base since the base closed over the last 20 years was 0.9%. So actually you're extrapolating that twice the growth that has been historic. So that already growth rate assumption is quite optimistic.
Okay. So we might need to adjust that. The final thing that I'd like to see us do before we start our process of updating our five-year plan is to consult with our healthcare consultants to see if our figures on higher expenses for healthcare are accurate or not. You know, we put aside, we said, okay, we're gonna have $150,000 more in 2018 we had last year, and $150,000 more the year after that, $197,000 the year after that. Are those numbers accurate? And can we get a better projection from our healthcare consulting firm, which obviously has a finger on the pulse of that kind of information? Those are the challenges we face for 2018 and 2019. Our planning for this year worked out quite well. We actually ended up, as I said, with slight fund balance. And we just have to keep doing what we've been doing. That's what it's all about. Anybody have any questions about this chart or challenge any of its assumptions or anything, please feel free to do so.
One thing I'd like to comment on is when we look at the population in 1960 was 20,000 in the most recent census. I think one thing we need to consider is that the air base left, that population was part of our census, but they were not part of our services. We did not offer fire, we did not offer police, we did not offer power, we did not offer water and sewer, we did not offer street paving. We've taken on a huge responsibility with that. And then Mr. Carpenter said in 1960 we had 9 police officers. I asked him how many opiate overdoses he had since then, and of that 20,000, what population then had the crisis that we have in our hands now? I would also ask what our daytime population is. Who comes into the city during day work, and how many people came in 1960 and how many people are coming now? I'd also ask what the state mandates are since the 1960s to this day going forward.
Yeah.
Those are things that need to be considered and all have a price tag on them.
They certainly do. I would ask you if you think if 9 police officers were enough in 1960, do we need 5 times the amount that we had in it?
Well, I don't know if
Maybe we only need 4 times the amount.
Well, I don't know if you're talking
3 times the amount.
officers or are we talking the police force? And we know where we are with the fire department with the staffing laws as well.
But the thing is, I think there's a way to analyze need and audit services in a productive way that can provide us with the information we need to evaluate more clearly what kinds of services we're trying to offer, what are our priorities, and what kinds of support do we have currently to carry out our operations. You know, so I mean, I think there are ways of analyzing that we maybe haven't done before in terms of our overall human resources that we can do, and that can also inform us as to whether we do streamline or whether we do retain, or we can make decisions about potential cuts to staff far more with better information in a much better manner.
Yeah.
Yeah, just those things to be considered.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We need data, and certainly the factors you mentioned play into the data. And the last thing we need is for this to be an emotional exercise. Yes, it is difficult, but we do have to stick with facts, and we have to stick with analysis, and then we'll get through this quite well. I'm sure we got power on this council to do just about anything, I think. Some good people here. So.
Like, how much status does the police department have now?
Last I heard they had 43 officers. Is that right, Dave?
I believe so, but we're also preparing to send forth to the upcoming academy. So if we don't want to do that, maybe now's the time not to send them.
Well, we can talk about it.
Because I think we've moved the academy up early into away from August into maybe May. So maybe we shouldn't be looking at that.
The last thing I want to do is make a lot of snap judgments about what we should or shouldn't do. We do need to discuss this thoroughly. We need to have analysis. We need to look at data. What other cities our size have for police departments? That's a very good question we need to answer. How do we stack up to other cities? I'd like
We
to
can
know.
also look at not just similar size, but also college towns Because
The closer our demographic, the better. Absolutely. Okay.
How do the numbers change if the number for, the property tax base increase stays at 0.9 going forward instead of 1.84? Is that a drastic change our numbers?
Well, it would mean that we have less revenue. Let's say we come up 1% short, just for the easy math that would entail. We have $11 million, we come up 1% short, that's $1.1 million in lost revenue that we have to make up for with lower expenses. Yes, 110,000, I'm sorry. So that would be $110,000 less that we would have to spend that to make up for that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments before we move on? Okay. There were no agenda items brought forward from departments to be approved by this committee, so we'll just move ahead and no old business that I'm aware of. Does anyone have any new business to discuss? Okay. Then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn from myself, Councilor Kelly. Second by Councilor Insel. And this meeting, do we need a roll call then?
Roll call.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Renzel?
yes.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
We're now in the public hearing. As a public hearing, City of Plattsburgh is holding a public hearing to hear public comment on local law P3 of 2018, a local law adding section 270-28-J under chapter 270, article 5, supplementary regulations of the city code of the City of Plattsburgh, a local law imposing a moratorium on commercial cryptocurrency mining operations in the City of Plattsburgh. There are copies of the proposed moratorium in the back for your perusal. And at this time, I'd like to open up an opportunity for. There are people outside that they would like to come in. This is the time for public comment, please. If you could organize under, we'd like to have representatives of all various views, but if you've heard your view stated by somebody else eloquently, we do, for the interest of time, please ask if defer. So please come forward.
I'm going to kick it off. My name is Doug Butler. I live at 64 Fall Drive in Plattsburgh. I'm also the property manager at the Imperial Industrial Park in the city of Plattsburgh. I've had conversations with you guys many times in the past, and I wanted to bring you up to speed a little bit on what's happening at the Imperial Industrial Park. Talk to you a little bit about our considerations for this. Specifically, in the past few months, there's been information that may not be correct about what's actually happening in the Imperial Industrial Park. Currently, and in December and January, we had one active Bitcoin mining operation, and it's using about maybe 1.5 megawatts of electrical power. That same individual had requested to expand our facility in March of 2017, and we told them that we were not interested in expanding them because they were not protecting the assets of our building well, and they weren't doing things we wanted them to. And so they subsequently found somewhere else in the city to do business. So they then connected to about 10 megawatts of power, and they're doing what they're doing elsewhere. We, as the city of the Imperial Industrial Park, though, from that mid-year 2017, have been actively pursuing opportunities with tenants to expand into different areas of cryptocurrency with our tenants. We've been working with the MLD for the past 6 to 8 months to identify a specific engineering solution for switchgear and a substation that we're put on our property that gets us access to about 6.5 megawatts of electricity delivered to the facility for use in cryptocurrency. That communication between our contractor and the MLB has been ongoing. They approved the engineering solution for that, and that's moving forward. We purchased that at been over $300,000 in cost. And we also have asked for and received a permit for the construction of interior walls within the building itself. We have a 560,000 square foot facility. We're designating approximately 5,000 square foot areas that we've begun construction and are nearly complete the construction of the separation of that area. So we've had some long ongoing things in place that have been in place and in process to move toward utilization of that 6.5 megawatts of cryptocurrency. And we would like to make sure that this moratorium does affect in process solutions. We also think that the ratepayers, I'm one of them, deserve action. So we need to make sure that something is done about the overages of electricity and a way to deal with costs. We need to protect the ratepayers in any way possible. Certainly our tenants are interested in talking to the city about solving that problem. But I know that uncertainty in the business world is a challenge. So an 18-month period of time on the moratorium is a very long time. I think it's too long for ratepayers and too long for business entities. So I'd like to maybe address that, if possible, within the moratorium to consider a shorter period of time. And the final thing that I'd like to just point out with the moratorium language as it exists so far is that it is tying the city of Plattsburgh into anything that's inside the city of Plattsburgh, regardless of the source of electricity, to this moratorium. If my organization wishes to go to NICEAD and bring a line of power off of NICEAD, we're a property that busts the town of Plattsburgh. We could just bring a power line over across the right away, put in as much power as NICEAD would be willing to give us, and we could operate it. It would be non-consequential for any of the ratepayers. But the way the moratorium is stated, it says specifically anything in the city of Plattsburgh, regardless of power source. And I'd like to say that it's specifically with MLB within the city of Plattsburgh, if that's possible to make that adjustment. And finally, kudos to Bill Tracy and the MLB and their work with IMPA to put together a solution that the Public Service Commission has taken action on recently, I think as recently as today, that allows the MLD to actually pass on the cost over the overages directly to those organizations which have high concentrations of electric power. So it seems like that ratepayer protection has been passed through the Public Service Commission and given to the MLD, then stands in the MLD's hands. It's something that I think can be, since that's taken place, I think that can move swiftly this moratorium because the ratepayers will be able to take care of it. So those are my concerns, and I want to make sure that you all heard those. Anybody have a question? Thank you very much.
Any other individuals please come and address the council?
I'm running across lots of good on 89 Main Street. Sure, you won't be ready. I just got one question here. Now, Bitcoin thing, were there any negotiations between the city and Bitcoin before they arrived at that L? Did they talk to anybody or do any kind of negotiation, or is that just on? They just go in, put in their station, and then start charging for electricity?
Well, it happened before my time, but I don't think there were any negotiations. There's just permits that were issued for various modifications of buildings.
Who issues permits?
The building
Buildings. Okay. One other thing too. With the Bitcoin, of course, there's everywhere across the street from there. And they're putting exhaust. Of course, those computers will be an awful lot. They got about 4 feet wide. They got about 3 or 4 going. Ain't bad right now in the winter time, but when summer comes, I like to have my windows open. I'm gonna hear a lot of noise. And if they expand any further, it's probably gonna get worse. What the city's gotta realize is, you made that supposedly industrial, right? You made it industrial, but you didn't, but that was before a lot of these people that are on council now, and here. Your council knows what I'm talking about here. And that was done, but it never took consideration to have 7 homes there. Nobody seemed to care. And we know where we went with this. Don't want to go there again. Trust me, I don't. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other individuals just like please address the council on the proposed moratorium?
My name is Ms. Burger, 799 Alice Way.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
No. People may be watching it.
I did have a couple of questions here. The city gave permits to Bitcoin to go over to the old mill. After that, knowing that they were drawing a lot of electricity, they then allowed them to have permits again to go Skyway. That doesn't seem fair to us as electrical taxpayers or electrical payers, period. And I think somewhere along the way, because it came either before this council or it came before members that you represent, like the building inspector's office, it seems to me that somewhere along the way, the electrical rate payers should be compensated for this. We should be taxed, or we shouldn't be burdened with this on our backs. That I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other individuals please come forward?
I'm Jeff Morrison, City of Plattsburgh. I would just like to say I'm for this moratorium. I think it's not Bitcoin that runs these it's independent people who do that. But I fear this for two reasons. One, I think that they're going to continue to come in here to drive the electric rates up to the commercial rates. It's a comparative advantage for these companies to come in and get cheap electric, and they're going to keep coming in until the electric price is very close to the commercial rates, and it's going to punish the local taxpayers and the ratepayers quite a bit. It's going to be quite a burden on everyone. So we need time to look into that, see what can be done there. And I also have a big concern for safety. As someone else mentioned, there's a lot of heat. Now, this time of year doesn't appear to be such a big problem. But I know, having worked with Wyeth, dissipating heat is quite a problem. In summertime, this is going to be a big problem. If these things are like electric heaters, it's going to cause a lot of heat. I'm pretty sure that all they're using is just fans. Well, when it's 90 degrees out, 90% humidity, that's going to create a problem. And I don't feel it helps the safety, especially going on the Skyway. If that starts a fire, that really damage our economy here in the city. And I think all these things need to be considered, and I'm very much in favor of having a moratorium to give us all time to consider all those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ford.
My name is Tom Ratney. I'm the Chief Financial Officer with Mobile Plastics. We had a chance to meet earlier in the week with the Mayor and Matt Miller. Just wanted to comment on the impact a bit to our organization. We employ just under 500 employees. We've been in Plattsburgh for over 40 years. We use about 2.9 million megawatts per month. Our bill last month went up $22,000 as a result of the increase in the price. Now it also went up another $9,000 per month earlier in the year, and that had to do with the I'll say the surcharge that the governor put on with respect to keeping these nuclear plants open. And that hit us pretty hard. So $9,000 and $22,000, that's $30,000 a month, which is pretty extraordinary. Over the course of the year, obviously, that'd be between $300,000 and $400,000. Over the past 10 years, we have increased our size, our volume 3 times, but we've only, I'll say almost 300%, but our increase in energy has been 50%. We've done it with used a lot of efficiency in compressed air and then electric machines that we use and a variety of different pieces of equipment. So we try and it's important for us to be competitive. We're selling a commodity. We sell it worldwide. We sell it to 50 states, 40 countries worldwide. We pull in roughly $12 million internationally from outside the area, bringing in Plattsburgh here, and we have about $25 million for payroll. And we support probably $3 million for the hospital in terms of medical benefits that go on there. It's very important to us, and Plattsburgh has been just an anchor for the company for a long time. We do have an opportunity to expand in other places, so we're putting more equipment in now. And we're also looking for ways that we can do some things in concert with the city to save some energy and possibly through the use of the Independent Energy Efficiency Program that we have. We've done a few things in the past, but there's a way for us to move that needle down by utilizing some of that fund. When we only save 3 cents a kilowatt hour, on our bill, we know we can save a lot more on the top side of that for what we purchase on the outside. And so we'd love to have the opportunity to do a little bit more about that. But with regard to the moratorium, it's just, I think it's important to kind of get a fixed sense and handle on this in light of the impact that it's had on all the citizens of the city, the businesses. I'm also a board member in the hospital, CPH, and I know they can afford to have that rating increase as well. It's been a struggle over there just to make ends meet. So I just wanted to share that with you. And if anybody has any other questions, be happy to answer them, but appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any other business like to come forward?
No, I just very I want the flash metal there. Is there a dam in the back of that building that produces some electricity? Has anybody checked into that? To help the city, help come up with it?
It's actually controlled by the state government, the DEC, and they're contemplating taking the dam out rather than reconverting it back to hydro. Thank you.
My name is Andrew Gold. I live in the city. I don't think fish like that dam is probably why it's going to be limited. It's probably very updated and state mandated, like police, fire department. I'm not in favor of the Bitcoin establishments using power here to take advantage of something that's a cheap commodity. They're riding to town, taking over. They may have 1, 2, 3 employees, most maybe employ people part-time to build equipment. I'm concerned with fire concerns, much of that has already been said. This moratorium, does it also include getting rid of what may have been permitted or allowed?
No, it's only for pending or future applications.
I'm not sure, I haven't read the law or the moratorium as it was written. I haven't see a copy of it yet. It makes me think of gas and shale drilling that's taking place in the southern tier of Pennsylvania that the governor stopped from moving into New York. It has certain advantages. I think the disadvantages far outweigh the advantages. My electricity bill goes up because of the PPAC nuclear. People may not understand that when you get charged for the nuclear spot power, and I did hear you on radio on CCC radio, the interview, it was Thursday night after the meeting. That interview was probably done during the day. The PPAC charge is billed 1 month later, so you get your current electric charge at the end of the day bill ended, but your PPAC charge, which stands for some acronym of nuclear power, is the previous month's. So it's confusing. You don't necessarily know that you have to add one bill from one month's bill with the previous amount of the previous bill. It's confusion that's easily overlooked. Just going to say something else that slipped my mind. If anybody wants to hear that CPCC podcast, hear the mayor discussing with a broadcaster or presenters home in England on CBC Radio, cbc.ca. You also did mention that the city of Plattsburgh, now, we live in the city. There's quite the difference between the city and the town. One may say they've come to town, but in fact they've come to the city. So, not a clarification anybody in the radio broadcast world needs to do that. I did think of that. This is a city issue. And if the guys at the mill want to get their power up nice and haul wire in, the moratorium language may have to be adjusted accordingly. And I think it's very important this meeting being held. We've got people from all over the country that are listening into this, and we're setting precedents. That meeting has to be reviewed very, very carefully and pass through a number of hands, people that understand what they're reading. If NYSEG wants to run a line and build power to nuclear power plant and it's further downstate, I won't denigrate downstate New York versus upstate. If there's an abundance of power somewhere else, these guys need to be tapping into theirs, not to ours. We've got a tiny lot, it really is small. Nobody here knows what a megawatt is or megawatts. Nobody can understand any of that. You know your electrical bill is $100, it's $130. Why? It's because these guys that are mining Bitcoins are riding into town, taking advantage of the situation, and they'll be gone, and flash those computers are up in the truck and gone. And one day, probably, and you have a better understanding. You describe them as little heaters. Basic computers. If you want to analogize what a Bitcoin might be, just think of a pile of sawdust on the floor. You sweep it up from all over the world, and you can create a piece of art, Mona Lisa, out of all the sawdust. And that's what I think of an analogy is. They're sweeping computers all over the world, using incredible amounts of power, and they do have these computer farms in the desert using solar power. They have them all over the world. When you run your computer, you may be sucking power from anywhere else in the world. But I don't think we need to have these in the city of Plattsburgh unless they're getting their power from some other source, not just plugging in to what at this time is an advantage to them and poses no advantage to us. There's no jobs being created to speak of, none whatsoever. And no one is advantages is short term or the long term. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stephen Crane, 6 Lorraine Street. Also, I'm a computer science professor in Plattsburgh. I want to focus in on some of the stuff that goes around cryptocurrency that relates to probably not the ones we have in town, but maybe the ones who might come after them. It's very much there's an illusion in the mining language that you're finding something, creating something out of nothing, when you're finding it in the ground or something like that. When the reality is very different from that. There has not been any significant amount of lasting value created from Bitcoin or any of the other cryptocurrencies. All of the value comes from what people are willing to shell out right now to buy it. That means that if you make $1 million, you're taking that $1 million from someone else. You're not making $1 million out of thin air. So there's, if you look at the historical prices for Bitcoin, 2010, a year after it came out, 30 cents a Bitcoin. The next year, $25. These are the peaks for the given year. $25, $13, $1,100, $900, $460, $950, $19,000 last year, up from 30 cents in 2010. Those are not coming from the intrinsic value of Bitcoin. They are coming from speculation, from people thinking that if they buy it, it's going to be 30,000 next year, because it went up from 950 last year to 19,000 this year. So there's I think from what I've seen, the Bitcoin miners we have in town right now are very responsible, and they're trying to do things the right way, but that is not what the whole world of Bitcoin miners looks like, and that's not necessarily what the next Bitcoin miner coming in is going to look like. By and large, Bitcoin miners are very opportunistic. They're driven by, wow, it's $19,000. I need to go build out a whole bunch of capacity. And so there's that, and then they're driven by the sense of urgency that if I have to get in now while the getting in is good, and that urgency is not good for critical thinking. I've been watching the security vulnerabilities and everything in the whole milieu of businesses around cryptocurrency, and it's very obvious to me that there is very little careful thinking going on in this industry. They're oblivious to the scalability of it. Bitcoin is never going to become the new currency. It doesn't have the scalability and the efficiency and everything that it needs for that. And people are buying into it and raising the price up, kind of hoping that it will be. So, and there's a lot of obliviousness in this group. Not here, but in the people who are building the cryptocurrency world towards the security, the value. You hear about someone breaking into a cryptocurrency wallet holding company and stealing $250 million worth of cryptocurrency. And oh, sorry, we didn't think about that. So I'm concerned about these things. So I have some recommendations. Number one, I really think that a scale of 18 months is way too long for a moratorium. 18 months from now, and everything that you put into place over those 18 months is going to be for a landscape that no longer exists. And so I do have to agree that a shorter time frame is necessary. I think that it's important to, if we're going to have a moratorium, that we also have a moratorium on additional expansion by existing miners, because that's something that can raise the dangers and so on just as much. And I think it's very important that any miner coming into town understand that there are real costs associated with coming in, that they can't predict all of those, and that they're on the hook for all of them. And that goes for risks as well, that they're assuming risks. They're essentially speculators. They should be bearing all of their own costs and have their own share of, taking all of the risks. I don't think Plattsburgh should be taking on new contracts to get cheap energy for cryptocurrency, where these are long-term contracts, and Plattsburgh ends up being on the hook for them if the need for that dries up, for example. They need to be, we should not be taking on their risk for them. People have been mentioning the heat that these things produce in terms of the danger of fire. But we also need to think about the heat these things produce in terms of how that's going to change the ecology of the area around there. That's a critical thing. We actually care about our plants and animals around here, I believe. And that's something that dumping lots and lots of heat out is going to be a problem for. I see this as a bubble. I don't know if it's going to last 3 years or 3 months. And so I don't know if it's going to even last long enough to really matter what kind of policies put in place or not. But that is like last for a while. Now, sometimes the miners may I'm running out of time. That's okay. So just really quickly, they may not be aware of the risks that their own success bring. There is definite documentation of organized crime being interested in cryptocurrency organizations, and we need to be cognizant of if they skip town and leave their materials here. That's a lot of electronic waste to pay for disposal of. And then just the last thing is, right now the cryptocurrency has won the media market, and so if we do put a ban on it, then we are going to look backwater and foolish and like we don't know what we're talking about. So just be aware of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Any questions?
I think we'll have some at the end.
Hello. I'm Tom Pillsworth. I do live in the city of Plattsburgh. A lot of talk about Bitcoin, and a lot of talk about Bitcoin from people that truly don't understand it. Bitcoin came out in 2009. It was the Bitcoin protocol, which basically was the first world uses of blockchain technology. What most people don't understand is that what Bitcoin miners are doing is they're running ASIC-specific computers that maintain a global blockchain ledger. Bitcoin was designed as a peer-to-peer payment network, so one of the things it's proven over the years is that you can, like an email, send something instantly anywhere in the world for absolutely zero money. It's absolutely nascent technology that is really transforming the world. The growth of Bitcoin has actually evolved from just talking about Bitcoin to the underlying technology, which is the blockchain. So what a lot of people don't understand, again, is that all these miners, these people that are mining, they are mining data for a global blockchain network. Companies like FedEx are now using blockchain. Department of Homeland Security is securing their border feeds with blockchain technology. Every bank in the world is either exploring blockchain, implementing blockchain, or using blockchain for their banks. Every government in the world is exploring blockchain. You've got, the immigrant crises in Europe. You've got undocumented immigrants. They're using blockchain technology in Denmark and numerous places around the world to identify all these people and store this information. When you get college degrees now, your degree is now put on the blockchain. These computers are doing something which is a lot more than just mining this speculative amount of money. Basically, the reason somebody buys a $2,500 Bitcoin miner and spends $1,000 a year running the thing for a year, they're maintaining global blockchain. Why would they do that? Basically, Bitcoin was designed to pay the miners back who are supporting a global blockchain network. The blockchains have evolved from just Bitcoin to Ethereum network, which is another type of blockchain. IBM has its own blockchain. So there's private blockchains, there's public blockchains, there's decentralized and centralized blockchains. So basically, the whole mining thing is a necessary part of how these blockchains, these global things are happening. Medical records. I mean, almost everything in the world in 10 years from now, mark my words, will be all stored on blockchain technology. One of the reasons it's proven, one of the reasons why the price keeps going up, is not just about speculation, is that Yahoo's been hacked, Target's been hacked, the government's been hacked, everybody in the world's been hacked. Blockchain is the only documented thing in the history of the world that is cryptographically secure that's never been hacked. So governments are using blockchain technology, banks are using blockchain technology to store really private data, all right? So all these miners are doing something, not just mining Bitcoin, they're mining Ethereum, they're supporting blockchains, public ledger blockchains, private ledger blockchains, hyperledger blockchains. These data centers are not just going to be for Bitcoin miners. Bitcoin mining actually runs out in a certain number of years. They've already mined 18 out of 21 million. They're going to start supporting all these other blockchain initiatives which are around the world. So this is something that is really transforming the world, and the biggest, most powerful companies, the smartest people in the whole world are all looking into this. I mean, I took the University of Nicosia course in 2014. I took the Princeton blockchain course. I started class last Wednesday at Oxford University, the Say Business School, which is one of the best business schools in the world, on blockchain technology and development of blockchain strategy for businesses. Blockchain is transforming the world, and what these miners are doing is maintaining a global blockchain. So just to give you a little overview with that. In terms of the moratorium, we're talking about an 18-month moratorium on that. This isn't the first time this has happened. Here's a 43-page report of another city in the United States that has 70,000 residents that, all of a sudden crypto miners were coming, into their community, taking all this extra power, and they had to deal with it. And they basically have gone through every single thing you need to know. You could just transplant Plattsburgh's data into this, and it comes up with an answer. And the answer was basically to charge these high-density miners, the high-density data centers. I mean, Google has data centers. Google's going to employ blockchain technology. Facebook. You start denying Bitcoin miners, you're not going to get the IBMs, you're not going to get the Googles and the Facebooks, you're not going to get governments and worldwide banks wanting to host, machines that support the blockchain technology here in Plattsburgh. As a city resident, nobody wants their power to go up, and what a lot of people also don't realize is this has been going on for 5 years. The miners and the people that are developing these blockchain companies have said 100 times, and I'll say it 101 times, they are more than willing to pay for the electricity. They are more than willing to pay an extra 1 cent or 2 cents, which would bring extra millions of dollars of taxpayer money to here to Plattsburgh. We could be running with a huge tax surplus if we embrace these things coming. Oh, I'm running out of time. So that's this report. That's an overview of blockchain. And I was going to do the hear-ye, but the New York State Public Service Commissioner today said that upstate municipal power authorities could charge higher electricity rates to cryptocurrency miners that require huge amounts of electricity. We welcome and encourage companies to build and grow their businesses in New York, said the Commissioner, John B. Rhodes. So as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, you are now allowed to charge miners a little bit more. So let's make a little bit of money for everybody. Nobody's power bills will go up, and we'll have a lot more money on our local tax base. So don't blame Bitcoin, all right? Look at the picture and realize that this could change Plattsburgh forever in a good way.
Thank you.
Anybody else, please come and address the council.
I was not planning to talk because I'm not a resident of Plattsburgh, but I am one of those guys mining Bitcoin as a subproduct of R&D for blockchain applications. So it happens that our machines are in the worst place of the United States, California, Palo Alto. And we have them there for a reason. It's because we have top talent. Everybody knows the talent in Palo Alto and the universities there. And our operation has made a lot of breakthroughs in the use of energy and yielding more out of these machines. So I have a former investment banker, I have an MBA, computers data scientist. Eric is a PhD in computational economics professor at NYU. We are this consulting firm where we have been doing projects for hedge funds and startups in California and in Asia and Fortune 100 companies. And what I see right now with Plattsburgh is an opportunity to take advantage of what can come out of blockchain technology. There is a very interesting book called The Competitive Advantages of Nations by Michael Porter. And he talks about how certain countries are, just simply because of geography or conditions, they are better suited than others for certain industries. And this is what I would say is happening with Plattsburgh. Plattsburgh right now has a competitive advantage. It has a university, it has the right weather, and the electricity is very cheap. But it's not the only location. We have about 10 prospective locations. We just happen to like Plattsburgh because of the combination of elements, especially the university. And, 2 cents more expensive in Maine or in PA, it doesn't really matter. The uniqueness is the university, the weather, and the ability to talk to the people doing legislation so miners can benefit, but the city too. There is no regulation about the use of electricity or how much profit miners make, but we have the opportunity to start creating it now and export to the rest of the country and the world. So those are my 2 cents. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other individuals, please come address the council. Seeing none, I'll end this public hearing and we'll begin the meeting of the Common Council. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Councilor Armstrong?
Here.
Councilor Kelly?
Here.
Councilor Dowell?
Here.
Councilor Ensel?
Here.
Councilor McFarland?
Present.
Councilor Kretzer?
Here.
First of all, thank you all for coming. Obviously, a great audience interested in some of the issues that our council will be dealing with. I'm looking forward to a very good discussion, and I also thank the presentation of the Budget Committee that was the preamble to this, and all those that were able to comment on the public hearing with regard to one of the items on the agenda tonight. I think that's all I'll have to say, and we'll let it devote as much time as possible to thorough discussion tonight.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on March 8, 2018 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the City Clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Kretzer. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of various departments of the City of Plattsburgh for the week ending March 14, 2018 in the amount of $535,977.54 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. A number of reports that have been submitted and have been in your packet, and I'd like to also call on the various committees to give us updates and reports. We'll begin with governance strategy and city operations. Councilor Kretzer, please.
We had a really nice meeting, Councilor Armstrong and myself, with owners of the local taxi livery companies this past week. We were able to understand the desire for a tax fare increase for taxi fares within the city. We're currently working with the Corporation Council, and we're trying to understand what our recommendations will be to the council, and we'll be bringing that together to the council in the near future. Continued work on finding different types of strategic planning software that could be used to help streamline and create efficiencies. Ongoing efforts with the farmers and crafters market. They'll be meeting with their members on the 22nd to discuss different options and possibilities that we suggested in order to potentially I guess make everyone happy in regards to the market. Councilor Armstrong, what do you say?
I can't think of a time.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. City infrastructure, Councilor Rensel, and welcome back.
Well, thank you.
Welcome back,
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the last infrastructure committee meeting, but I do see the minutes here. So I guess I can just kind of give a summary of the minutes. Mayor was authorized to sign an agreement with Pine Harbor for the property on Ohio Avenue in the Nevada Oval adjacent to Pine Harbor to remove some scrub brush, intermittently clear poplars, and raise the canopy of the mature trees on the property paralleling Pine Harbor, so that window views can be obtained of the lake and avoid clear cutting and removing any trees that would cause any erosion. We asked the mayor we authorized the mayor to sign grant disbursement agreement between the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York and the City of Plattsburgh for $300,000 for restoration of windows throughout City Hall. Also authorized the mayor to sign a contract for design services on South Peru Street with Greenman Peterson for an amount not to exceed $600,000, which would be reimbursed through CHIPS funding. We request that a couple of contracts from the water pollution control plant be awarded.
Thank you. Finance and budget, Councilor Kelly.
Well, we had our meeting just this afternoon, Mayor, and everyone attended, and we discussed the 2017 results and compared that to our budget, and talked a little bit about the 2018 budget and where we stand currently, and even looking forward to the 2019 budget. So we got a lot of work to do. Next month we will have a review of the first quarter of the year to see how we fared. So looking forward to that. Thank you.
Public safety, Councilor Dowdle.
Oh, I have no new updates. We'll be meeting next Thursday, which will be our monthly meeting. Of course, that involves the police department, fire department, and the building inspector. Usually the police and fire are under the spotlight, but I suspect after tonight, Mr. McMahon will be part of the spotlight, if not the spotlight.
Thank you. Plattsburgh Public Library, Councilor Armstrong.
Yes, there's a need for two new trustees as a result of vacancies on the Plattsburgh Public Library Board. There was a replacement to one of the windows near the new coffee bar there, but also an assessment was done on other windows, and everything looks to be in pretty good shape, which is good, with the exception of perhaps one more window. The maker space that has been developed there is up and running and ready to go, and they have an intern to help facilitate future projects there. They received a grant, a heating grant from the state, and they're going through construction. The building has been going through a gradual process of rehabilitation that's been really rather impressive, and I have to commend the work that Director De La Chapelle has done to procure grants and make sure the money is in place to you know, restore the building's integrity. So I really appreciate that. I think, you know, we can be encouraged by the way in which the trustees and Treasurer Chamberlain are taking care of their budget. I think it's in the most stable and sound shape it's been in for years, and I really appreciate those efforts. There's been a lot of grant writing done on Director De La Chapelle's under her efforts, and the goal is to put money away for capital spending. As of now, they've spent, I think, a total of $0.5 million on the building, but they've only had to pay for 30% of it out of their own funds. So I think we need to be really proud of our library. Please use it, pay attention to all of the innovations that are going on there. I think in terms of library development, libraries in New York State are really trying to be more spaces for a wide assortment of activities, and I think the maker space is one good example of that.
Thank you.
Can I ask, the window near the coffee shop, is that a drive-up window or walk-up window? Or? No,
That'd be nice.
No, it'd be quite a stretch, but okay, I was just wondering.
Slide.
Thanks, yeah, okay.
Dumb waiter.
And Municipal Lighting Department Board President, Councilor Ansel.
I have no report at this time.
Thank you. So it's resolved that the reports that's listed are hereby ordered, received, and any written reports are placed on file amongst the public records of the City Clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Kretzer, second by Councilor Ansel. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. No correspondence to the recommendations from boards at this time. So please continue.
Resolved that the budget allotted by the Common Council for the week ending March 16th, 2018 in the amount of $1,185,163.18 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is an opportunity for any individuals to come and address the council once again on issues on the agenda tonight. There will be another public comment period for various other issues at the end of the meeting. So please come forward.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Gagno, manager of the Plattsburgh Farmers and Crafters Market. And I just wanted to, we appreciate everything you guys are trying to do for us. And I just wanted to bring up a couple little things that I didn't know if you knew or not. Last year we did get 6 new vendors. We added 6 new vendors to our market, which had very unique items that we didn't have before. And our we were able to expand as far out as we could to the barricades that were out there. So that was great. I mean, the season starts off a little bit slow, but as the season goes on, we get more and more vendors, and it really goes out. We have, you guys were talking about adding 4 or 5 more vendor areas. the biggest problem that I feel, and some of the other people do too, is the parking issue, which I know you guys realize that too, because the parking is a nightmare down there. And if we are going to have, I think, a couple spaces vacant inside this year, so if anybody, you know, you guys, I don't know if you knew of the 4 or 5 vendors, we know one of them, but if there are other vendors that have approached you, they haven't approached us, so we didn't know, you know, if they want to join us, please have them come see us or let us know. You know, we have sent out a couple applications, which I haven't got them back yet. Okay, I sent those out about a week and a half ago, and nothing has come back. So I just wanted to let you guys know, and that we appreciate everything you're doing for us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Any other individuals, please come address the council.
Is this on any items on the agenda?
On the agenda, correct. Any items on the agenda?
Including cryptocurrency?
Yes,
Including
it's on the
cryptocurrency.
On the agenda.
Thank you. My name is Christian Dillon. I don't live in the city of Plattsburgh, but I do work in the city of Plattsburgh. I want to address the council a little bit on the cryptocurrency moratorium. First thing I would like to say, just thank you to my colleague, Dr. Crane from Plattsburgh State. Very well done presentation. We both work in the same cybersecurity space. So first of all, as far as 18 months, in internet time, 18 months is a lifetime. So if you're considering that moratorium of 18 months, you're basically saying to cryptocurrency, you are not welcome here. Because in 18 months, we might be making different decisions about this. So please consider a shorter time. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I think that's, just to give you a simple example, the speakers here have already been watched on the internet. We're already receiving messages about those things. That's the speed of the internet today. So Tom Pillsworth did a presentation for you. By the way, he's a cryptocurrency educator. He's presented at Plattsburgh State on several times. We had roundtable discussions. I'm sorry I didn't see the council people at those presentations, even though they were public. And you know, one of the questions that I actually raised during the roundtable discussion is the city of Plattsburgh going to support this new technology? And you know, most of the cryptocurrency miners that were there, they had very reserved comments. They were very nice about it, but we want to make sure we don't turn that away. And again, I don't know, is the historian of the city of Plattsburgh here? Okay. From my knowledge, I mean, we snobbed IBM. We didn't want them in there, right? We snobbed Ford Motor Company. Okay, and look at the changes that IBM has brought to Burlington. Yes, there's negative, there's positive, but I think there's a great deal of positive that came with IBM. You know, it could be that IBM might want to do cryptocurrency right here in Plattsburgh. But see, the eyes of the world are on us today as a result of that New York Times article. And there are people all over the world that are watching these presentations today. So I encourage you to consider it. If you're not sure of that 18 months, please table it. Table it. Discuss it more. You know, give yourself 30 days, 60 days, maybe 90 days. 18 months in internet time is a lifetime. We might not be talking about this in 18 months. So please consider that. And again, thank you, Dr. Crane. It was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other individuals, please come address the council. Seeing none, could we continue?
Motion to remove item 7A from the table.
Do we have a motion?
No motion.
Next item.
Adoption of local law P-3 of 2018. Resolved, the local law adding section 278-28-J under chapter 270, article 5, supplementary regulations of the city code of the city of Plattsburgh.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the reading.
I move the motion.
And move the resolution. Thank you.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer, second by Councilor Armstrong. Discussion?
Wow. Yes, go ahead.
Just really 3 points. The 18-month timeframe, we can go shorter than that into the
Section 5
Right.
term of the moratorium says it may be, this local law may be terminated earlier if the common council determines by resolution that the purposes of the law have been fulfilled.
But I would suggest that to keep that language in there, I'm certainly appreciative of all the commentary, both that from those people who are ratepayers who are alarmed, and also from those people who appear to be on the cutting edge of this industry. And so I'm certainly looking at this whole question with a different lens than I did walking into this place. At the same time, I'm using your time. I'm sorry. You finish your question, then I'll say all this.
just wanted to know the status of those that are, the applications that are underway, that are in the process of, where are they, where would they be at with this?
Something that has begun, but has yet to be completed.
The law specifically says that any pending or future application would be covered by this moratorium. However, we had a brief discussion last week. There's a concept called vested rights, which basically allows, under certain circumstances, those applications that have devoted substantial expenditure and substantial completion of construction that may earn, on a fact-by-fact basis, a vested right. So this moratorium wouldn't address that. You wouldn't address that in this setting. And that'll be a determination if an individual or a company makes a request to the city, we can deal with it based on those facts.
So it's in effect an appeal that they would make. I mean, not a formal appeal, but yeah.
For lack of a better term.
Yes.
Substantial's a somewhat ambiguous word, though. I mean, what defines substantial?
That's where courts come in. Hopefully it wouldn't come to that, but that's where those points of analysis come from prior decisions.
There's case precedent to rely upon.
And one other thing, we just heard a comment, I forgot who brought it up, that it was just announced that we could charge differently, a rate as of 4 o'clock today, because before that we could not, is that correct?
That's right.
Correct.
And the residential rate is twice what the commercial rate is that my understanding? Okay. But now we would be...
I imagine the intermediate rate would be somewhere between the two, but we haven't had a number approved for us yet. That would be a separate application.
And we could have up to 18 months to work on that through this, is that correct? Okay, so that's one of the reasons. Okay,
well,
I'm done. I had 3 things.
I'm going to then follow up. So, some of the factors that concern me are the safety that needs to be taken into account, and you know, we're in effect catching up to this rapidly growing industry, and I do believe that a hard look needs to be taken at all of the you know, potential problems, and I was really glad that the professor brought up the effect of excessive heat on our local ecology. I think that should be taken into account much more seriously than I think we currently are. You know, I mean, I don't even think that has come into the conversation. So I'm really interested in all those things. But as I said, I am also intrigued by the possibility of future investments. If there's a way to mitigate some of the negative effects of this technology. I mean, I would only find it acceptable if that solution was found before going forward, that there is possibility. And I'm kind of in a little bit of a dilemma because I can see the logic behind the suggestion that we really, in terms of computer technology, 18 months is a lifetime, and so if there is a boat we want to catch, we may miss it if we create a moratorium of that length, and even have the language in our resolution to suggest that, because that communicates a great deal. So I would like to suggest that not that I want to cut off discussion now, because I think everybody's kind of chomping at the bit to say something, but that suggests that tabling this, at least to explore new terms, and to think of all the things we hadn't thought of before we came to this meeting tonight would be a really wise thing to do, and that's all I'll say.
Now,
I guess I have a question for both Tom and Christian, because you had mentioned how this technology could maybe economic engine. It has the potential. My understanding is that currently there are very, very few employees that are employed by these companies. Could you, I guess, for the novice, kind of explain how, and besides the other applications, I know, Tom, you mentioned applications are being used by companies all across the world, but
Sure.
How could this ultimately be an economic engine to benefit the?
Just because.
I'm louder than that.
No, it's for live streaming purposes, so.
One of the initial ideas was you have issues where giant companies come in and they're looking for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 megs of power, and a large company with scale can operate one of these large companies without a whole lot of people. If Ford Motor wanted to come in with a production line 50 years ago, they would have had 1,000 workers, but because it's all automated, now it's only 100 workers. So the metric of power to jobs doesn't really work. But somebody mentioned Silicon Valley, or Plattsburgh could become a tech hub. If the power was literally doled out in smaller increments with incentives, 1.5 meg, 1.5 meg, 1.5 meg, you could potentially create 10 or 20 small hosting or data centers, which would all employ 2 or 3 people. Very similar to the operation that Ryan Brienza here. He took a year off from college to start this little business, and it employs 3 people. And 11.2 megs of power here in Plattsburgh are being used, 11 by one guy and 0.2 by us, and we employ 3 people. Small segments like that could very well, what Doug is doing at the industrial, at his facility, he's actually broken 10,000 foot spaces into 3,300 square foot spaces, and took power and separated it, and so he's attracting 3 more companies. So you could literally scale this. You could fit 20 or 30 companies, all creating a whole bunch of people. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a couple notes. We're not going to be able to answer all your questions tonight, but if you would like to, we can put another roundtable discussion for the council and for the public as well. We'll be happy to do it here, or we can look at the college of doing that, and we can bring all the people in town that are involved in this or thinking of this. Just a little public announcement: this summer we'll be delivering the first cryptocurrency course online at SUNY Plattsburgh. It actually is being taught out of the same department as Dr. Reed's Finance and Economics. So Dr. Razvan Pascal will be delivering that course. He's doing some research right now associated with that. But if you would like it, the council would like a roundtable discussion, we'd be very happy to get that together, and we can answer all your questions in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christian.
Now, I have a question procedurally. If we, as Rochelle said, she's thinking about tabling this discussion. And I agree with her that 18 months is way too long of a moratorium, although I do think that the law does give us a chance, and I do think the voters, the constituents, the businesses don't deserve an 18-month moratorium, that the council, that the city should be acting much faster than that. Now, clearly, with the decision that came down at 4 o'clock today, we might get some traction on this. The problem is right now that it seems kind of like the Wild West with this. Everyone can move in. Clearly, we have people that have reasonable concerns. As Jeff said, our cheap electricity is Plattsburgh's comparative advantage. That's why people want to live in the city. That's why people don't want to live in, or that's why people will live in the city even though we have much higher taxes in the town. A common rebuttal to the high taxes is, well, our electricity's cheap. Now, this moratorium doesn't really address electricity, but clearly that's why mold right's here too. Our comparative advantage is our cheap electricity. now I understand what you're saying. If we table this discussion, because 18 months, even though that the moratorium may last much less than that, if we get our act together, if we start having roundtable discussions, if we start getting policies in place that can really control it to make it move forward for the best of our constituents and the best for these businesses to move in, and if there's a headline that says 18 months moratorium, then everybody might pack up and take off. I'm wondering, and I think Dean can probably answer this, to change the wording in the proposed law would probably take another 2 weeks, probably require another public hearing. If we table it for next week, we're probably pushing this whole thing off for close to a month. And then what happens within that month? We have many people coming in, setting up shops in ways that aren't beneficial to our constituents, aren't beneficial for our overall city, for our view of what we want to accomplish in the city, for our view of setting up these businesses in a way that promotes investment, that promotes furthering the blockchain agenda. I'm not an expert on blockchain. I'm not an expert on cryptocurrencies in general. I honestly didn't know about blockchain until 3 weeks ago. But it does seem that something needs to be put in place soon, and I do think 18 months is way too long for a moratorium on this issue. As Tom and Christian pointed out, 18 months in internet terms is way too long. But if we table this for a month, if we have to come up with new wording on a moratorium, if we have to come up with have a new public hearing in a month, what's going to happen with, are more companies going to come in and get vested rights that we can't do anything for? One of the things that's a glaring, a problem that a lot of people have, and we had Ms. Laverne Hicks, I believe, come up and said that she wants to be compensated. She thinks our electric payers should be compensated for what's already been taken from them. In a month's time, if more people get vested rights, as Dean says, this moratorium doesn't affect those people that are currently in here and affecting the city in what many perceive as a negative way, because we have no policies in place. So I am concerned that if we table it, even though 18 months is clearly too long, that the situation could progress beyond our control in that time.
Yes.
And we do have the option to change
Point well
the term.
taken.
The moratorium is written, that we could come back in a couple of months and look at the term.
Councilor Kelly?
I'd just like to ask our Bitcoin blockchain community, if we were to pass this moratorium tonight, would you jump in and help us resolve the outstanding issues just as quickly as possible? Perhaps in 30 days, perhaps in 60 days. We want progress and growth as much as anyone else does in our fair city, but we also have several thousand ratepayers that are complaining that you Bitcoin guys raise their rates for 2 months out of the year. If you're feeding a family and struggling to buy medicine and pay the rent and pay the car payment, that extra $70 you had to pay in January and February really makes a difference. So we have to figure out a way to make that problem resolved at the same time as we help you. So I would ask you if you will help us resolve the problems with blockchain and the electricity that you're using, and are you willing to pay a premium for that to continue to operate, so that Mrs. Hicks and other people in our community have a fair electrical rate that they've always expected and always had? Would you be willing to help us with those two things? Help us resolve the outstanding issues and then pay your fair share so that Mrs. Hicks doesn't have to. I'm getting some nods here.
Good.
Absolutely.
Straw poll.
Yes, yes, without a doubt. You tell us to be here.
Can I
Okay.
quickly just, we keep addressing us Bitcoin miners. Again, 11.2 megs of power being used by Bitcoin miners here in town. 0.2 is a little operation here. The guy who uses the 11 megs, from what I'm aware of, he's not here. He's also the guy who's hopping the train up to Messina.
Okay.
Okay, you are here. You're not really talking to us, you know.
Okay.
Sure, in our little way, we would love to do any part we can help Plattsburgh to make this an amicable situation.
But I like what I hear you say about, you know, building data centers and attracting technology to our community. All that is potentially really, really good stuff. So I would hope you would help us with that also.
And as outsider, and we don't even have significant operations, but we do have expertise advising corporations and doing risk assessment. I volunteer my time to do a risk assessment for the city at no cost.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Kelly, a couple things. First, I think data speaks words, and I think we need better data. So I probably encourage the council to probably start taking a look at installing electric meters at these facilities that are connected over wireless or over cellular, so we can get up-to-the-minute data. I think that's important. It's important for us to have it up to the minute, not to have to wait till the end of the month until a meter reader goes on site and actually reads for those mining facilities. That might be a good way for us to research how do we change the whole city to wireless meters. The second point is I encourage the council to also, I'm not a miner myself, so you know, to approach some of these miners, you know, possibly go visit some of these facilities, you know, get hands-on, eyes-on, and really see what they're all about, because you'll be able to put a picture to the things that we're talking about. I'm sure, unless speaking for Tom, but I'm sure he would be very happy to probably give you a tour of his facility. I think that's important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to underscore that there was a mention about, you know, Bitcoin, and I'm learning about it tonight, and I appreciate a lot of the information shared, is that for another megawatt, we might put 2 or 3 jobs to work. We're using about 3 megawatts and employing just under 500 people. That's 170 people per megawatt. The nature of our business supports at least 2 to 3 other jobs. So for, you know, the megawatt that we use, we're putting in effect almost 500 people at work, and which is, I'll just say, a lot of an economic engine. I haven't quite gotten an appreciation yet for the economic engine from Bitcoin. It's a very interesting technology. It's fascinating. It's used around the world with all these major corporations. But with regard to the fairly limited resource that we have with regard to Hydro-Quebec, you know, how does it play in Plattsburgh, and how does it impact things? There's a lot of folks that own property, and the value of a house that was purchased in Plattsburgh or, you know, some other property had electric rates built in that were favorable, and people would pay a premium for that. Monthly bills and the value of a home and real estate, as well as you know, the viability of everybody's budgets and hospitals to boot. And I'll say our next door neighbor, Bombardier, who employs quite a few people as well. And, you know, I think we really have to understand that economic piece.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my initial reaction to, yes, yeah, that's definitely a point we have to consider. My initial reaction, not fully understanding what cryptocurrency was or what a blockchain was, any of those things, was what do we get back in our community economically for allowing this particular kind of industry to operate. And you know, that's still not entirely clear to me, especially if a site is just using 2-3 employees. So there are so many questions, but I think for the first time I have begun to understand the potential. And I want there to be a balance so that, as Councilor Kelly has said, we can make sure that our ratepayers are protected here, all of our ratepayers, commercial, residential, and find solutions that might create opportunity. Now, I'm still unclear, even though I'm so happy that you brought up the points you did. How would this play out in your mind then? What is your plan for going forward with this particular resolution? How do you see? Yes, Patrick. Sorry.
So I mean, I think a moratorium almost needs to happen right now to stop the bleeding and really assess what's going on. I'm not going to say I'm an expert on this field, but I hear roundtable discussions. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, I will go visit these facilities. I will go talk to anyone and figure out. I think MLD needs to be involved in setting up a way that really balances all the equities here.
Right.
And the moratorium only affects, I think, there's two in effect right now that won't be affected at all by the moratorium.
Right.
If we open it up to more that aren't going to be affected, we need to make sure that everyone that entering this field is on an equal playing field, and they know what we expect from them. They know what we're getting into, and they know what our constituents believe. And honestly, this moratorium is about safety as well. They're doing it in a safe fashion, as Dr. Crane pointed out, that there could be an ecological aspect of this. I certainly know almost nothing about that, but I hope to learn more about it and make sure that if this is going to be a big thing for Plattsburgh, as certainly a couple have indicated that it could be the next best thing for Plattsburgh, that it's done right.
But I was trying to extrapolate from your comments. You agree that we should go forward with the 18-month, we should vote on the 18-month moratorium because there are provisions for it being terminated after much earlier, and you're willing to let that be the message, that we can still go with the 18 months and really try to expedite it as a council and do the problem solving that we need to in a timely fashion.
Yes, and the point there is that if it's not 18 months, that's the way the moratorium is written, that's the way the law is written. If it's not 18 months, it's nothing. And by the time we get a new law written up, by the time we get a public hearing on it,
there's too many delays.
Too many delays. And if I had my druthers, it wouldn't last more than 2 months.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I do think that everyone needs to really put their heads to the grindstone here and make sure that these policies are put in place so the moratorium doesn't last anywhere near 18 months, because I agree with Mr. Buttdorf. I agree with Christian and Tom over there that 18 months, way too long.
Right.
Our public doesn't deserve a moratorium for 18 months. Our public doesn't deserve waiting even 6 months for us to get our act together and manage this, but it's certainly something needs to be done right now, and right now 18 months is what we got, but clearly the law says that we as a council can act, and if we do act, the moratorium won't last anywhere near 18 months.
Patrick beat me to the question. I was going to ask Dean, if we pass this law, what are the procedures, I guess, that once say we get together and we meet with all of the various entities involved and get more information, how quickly, or what's the procedures as far as changing the law?
Likely would be code changes to the building code, potential involvement with MLD. So the shortest possible time frame would be 2 weeks after the introduction of a new local law, adopting those new code changes.
Okay.
So, I mean, as far as the framework, that's going to be a policy decision that the council and the mayor can come up with.
So it can be done in an expeditious way.
100%. I mean, there's work to be done, though, to make those changes so it resolves any health, safety, welfare concern. And if the Public Service Commission has already acted to resolve the tariff issue, great, half the job's done.
Right. And like Patrick, I'm concerned that the publicity that this has generated, that we just have people just chomping at the bit, that if we don't do some sort of action,
Well, yeah, but
tonight
there's
or
some
in the nearby.
protection.
You're gonna have people set up shop, and then
Yeah.
we're really going to be swimming against the tide.
Right,
I
exactly.
suspect they're parked out front as we speak.
But I'm wondering if also just asking for volunteers to serve on kind of a subcommittee might also communicate our commitment to our research and whatever needs to be done to develop these policies in a timely fashion. You know, I mean, I think that creates a statement about our willingness to address this issue seriously and soon.
It's as if we're looking at this as a stopgap.
Yes. Are we ready to move motion then?
I have a couple more comments that may add a little bit more thought into this, very brief. I think they're important.
It's up to the council.
Well, we've had other speakers,
I'm ready to
so.
move. Are we ready to move on the motion?
I'd like to add one set of comments because I think there is a misconception about the Public Services Commission ruling. It does allow us potentially to apply to have a differential rate. Probably that rate would be somewhere between the current industrial and the current residential, probably still lower than the residential. But it does not, and I think there's a conception here that it allows us to charge the overages when we go over the quota, charge that entire bill to this industry. No, it doesn't. It allows us to only charge a prorated share. So if they're using 15% of the power, we go over the quota, the ratepayers are going to pay 85% of the cost going over the quota. When we go over the quota, we're no longer buying power at $4.50 per megawatt. We're purchasing power hopefully as cheaply as $32 per megawatt hour, something in the order of 7 times higher rate. If we go over that quota because our association no longer has sufficient reserve power to sell us, we go on the spot market, usually on the very worst times of the year when everybody's using an awful lot of electricity to heat or to cool in the summer, and those spot rates could sometimes be as high as 50 or 100 times the typical rate. We weren't going over that quota up until this winter and last winter. So when those rates on our ratepayers go up by, say, $70 in a month, multiply that by 5,000 or so ratepayers, that's $350,000 of additional bills paid for by our ratepayers for an industry that probably generates a couple $100,000 of billing for that month. So my goal is to protect the ratepayers at every single turn, and I think we're under the misconception that we're somehow protecting them tonight. We're not. We have to watch that quota. Now, if we can stay under the quota, I'm all in favor of selling every single megawatt of power we can possibly sell to anybody who would like to pay a fair rate for it, including Bitcoiners. And maybe there's ways to do that, but we cannot as a community afford to go over the quota and continue to have this wonderful benefit in our community of very affordable power to offset our slightly higher taxes here. We cannot jeopardize that as a community. This isn't because we're Luddites. It isn't because we're afraid of cryptocurrency. It's because we recognize we have a fixed resource, and unlike some other communities that the Bitcoiners are going to, where they can simply buy more power as much as they want at a going rate, and they could do that in the town, buy as much from NYSEG as they wish. We don't have that. We've got 104 megawatts. We've got a fixed amount. We have to manage that as a fixed resource. It's a very unusual situation, and we use that to benefit not only our residents, but employers like Moldrite or GP or the hospital or the university, and that's what allows us to keep these employers here. Nice, cheap electric rates. And those are my concerns, is protecting the ratepayers, and there is not a mechanism, unlike what we've been talking about, there's not a mechanism to bear those overages on that industry. As a matter of fact, the Public Services Commission expressly said today that that is not permitted. So please do understand the stakes. We have to protect the ratepayers first and the industries that produce so many jobs for us, and then we have to figure out clever mechanisms to sell any extra power that we can afford to sell to these entities. Now, if we can figure out mechanisms, and there are mechanisms to do that, we just have to be clever, and we have to require the cooperation of the industry. It requires us to have voluntary or some sort of agreements with them that we can sell power to them when we have power to sell to them, but we can't sell power to them when all of a sudden we're hitting the quota. And this is possible. So it's going to be very difficult for an existing user, an existing 11 megawatt user, for us to say to you, please turn your power off or your Bitcoin machines off for the next 3 weeks, because you're saying to yourself, that's about $1.5 million worth of profit. And we're saying, yeah, but we're trying to protect our ratepayers. And they're saying, yes, but we have right to that power. And maybe they do because they're grandfathered in. But we have to watch our capacity. This is a capacity issue. This is the most important natural resource that Plattsburgh has, and we have to manage it accordingly. So please have that weigh very heavily in your judgments, that we have to figure out how to do this right. And remember, this moratorium can be ended. I'm certainly 18 months for me. You all know me. 18 months is a lifetime for me. If we can figure out good solutions quicker, we will. We're not going to take any longer than is necessary to protect the welfare of our citizens in the city of Plattsburgh.
That just brought up a question for me, Mayor Reed, and that is that, does the Public Service Commission frown on municipal power companies buying power from the public or the private utilities? Do they keep score on that, and are there penalties for that? Does anyone know?
Mr. Tracy's not here. I believe we could buy extra power at a higher rate. Obviously, as you know, the rate in the town is about 4 times higher than the rate in the city. So if we bought extra power, we could try to meet their needs. But remember, the Public Services Commission ensures that we can't create differential types of customers.
Right.
When we go over the overages, we all share in those additional overages, not just a particular industry, and they try to protect that principle. So it wouldn't help us much to buy power from elsewhere. And there's also a capacity issue. We have a grid, a system that's designed for about the amount of capacity we have. The cost of expanding that capacity, bringing in more power, putting more power at different locations where different operators may want, is exceedingly expensive. Our ratepayers pay for that additional investment. Now, there is a provision under the Public Services Commission ruling that will, for the first time, allow us to demand that the industries coming to town will help pay for that infrastructure investment. But it's pretty scary, if you can imagine, to pay a $5 or $10 million improvement for an industry that may only be here for 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years. We can't have our ratepayers pay that additional burden either. So it would require an awful lot of redesign of the system, probably cost. And I'm not saying the system could not be redesigned. As a matter of fact, you've probably seen me write articles in the past that the entire grid in the United States really needs to be redesigned to take advantage of distributed power that hasn't existed before, to take advantage of DC power lines instead of AC that are far more efficient. There's a lot of technological things we ought to do as a nation and as a city, but those fixes are extremely expensive, even if they're worthwhile. And you all have to say whether you want to invest in those power lines in that grid, or do you want to repair that street in front of somebody's home. It does come down to that. There's no easy solutions here. Any further questions? Yep.
Just to that point, there's a 44-page report, which another city took 18 months to create, and they worked through every single one of these questions, from infrastructure rebuilds to this to that. They figured out a way that the taxpayers never pay extra money, and it's all right there. It's another municipality that's already gone through this process, and the precedent's already been set. The answers are right there in that report, and I think that would be a great guideline to figure out how to placate the citizens as well as the miners and kumbaya.
It is, and this community you're discussing is differentiated from ours in that they don't have that capacity constraint that I described. They can buy additional power at quite an affordable rate. They take advantage of the hydroelectric on the Columbia River dams. So that's different than we've got a fixed resource that we have to manage. And you know, when cryptocurrency companies look around the world, there's a different set of tiers and different prices that you can charge. We are most attractive because we're one of the lowest cost sellers of power in the entire planet. That's why so many people are looking at us right now. And wouldn't it be amazing if we could sell that lowest cost in the entire planet and provide everybody with as much power as they wanted. If we could do that, we would not be having this discussion today. The only reason we're having this discussion is because we're now bumping up against our quota like we never have before, and we have to figure out how to manage it. Now, there's a million really clever ways to do this, working with the industry in voluntary reductions of power usage at certain times, in heat recovery. So we're an area where almost all of the electricity we use for heating almost all the energy we use for heating is through electricity. It's very unusual. That's because our rates are so incredibly low. It'd be equivalent to an oil price somewhere around 70 cents or $1 a gallon. It's incredibly low here. But you don't see us opening up our windows in the middle of winter saying, boy, this heat is so cheap, let's just let all that heat out in the atmosphere. But this is how the industry works. Now, there are ways to heat recapture. If we can have standards where for every $1 of heat is used in this industry, we figure out how to recycle 50 cents by warming up the field house on campus, by warming up the hospital, by warming up the university, by warming up Trade Center, by warming up our schools, and recover even 50% of that. All of a sudden, this looks like a really good proposition for our city. So we can do these things, but we can't do them the way everything is currently structured, and that's why we need to sit down and figure out how to do this right.
No.
Any further questions? You prepared for vote?
Yes.
Yeah. Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the mayor is authorized to sign an agreement with East Coast Watercross LLC and Adirondack Coast Visitors Bureau to hold an event July 28th through July 29th, 2018.
Moved by Councillor Kelly and second by Councillor Ensel. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
The council established council department liaison committees during the organizational meeting held on January 4th, 2018.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the reading and move the resolution.
Moved by Councillor Kretzer and second by Councillor Dowdle. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Abstain.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves Hobie's Restaurant located at 68 Margaret Street to use 2 parking spaces in front of their establishment on Thursday, March 22nd, 2018 for Dub's Barbecue Food Truck Parking. Certificate of insurance, city clerk vendor permit, and vendor fee are required.
Moved by Councillor McFarland, second by Councillor Dowdle. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
There are no travel requests at this time. Are there any issues for resolutions for initial consideration? Seeing none, any additional council reports or new business? Please.
I have a new business item. We're mandated, is that true, to have a board of ethics or a commission of ethics?
Not mandated, it's allowable, or it's possible under the charter, but it's not a requirement.
Okay, and to develop that, is that through the New York State Attorney General's office? Is that where that would be?
That's set forth in our charter and our code, or our code rather, not our charter.
In a code?
Yep.
To do what? To set it?
That the city may establish a board of ethics, and it describes how that board is comprised and the processes that it should follow.
So what needs to activate that?
I had asked the governance committee to actually formulate that for us.
So it's just a matter of probably resolution to appoint members to the board of ethics. It hasn't, I mean, in my time, it hasn't been staffed. I don't know if any other counselor or anyone else has a longer term experience with the city to know when the last time it was staffed.
So it exists, it's just not staffed?
Yeah. The framework exists in the code, it's never been staffed.
It can be done.
So it's 3 members, one has to be an appointee or an employee of the
Go back to the specific language of the code, but yeah, it's all spelled out.
All right, thank you.
Duly noted.
Any other new business? At this time of the meeting, we have closing public comments. This can be on any topic. Please come forward.
I have a few comments. I didn't have to go first. Thank you. Go ahead.
So appreciate the action you've taken today. I would like to know from the council, from the corporate council, the exact process we go through to find out what our vested interest or whatever the terminology is. We'd like to follow that up immediately if we can. We would also be we would very much like to participate in the process for the deliberation so that we can get this off the plate in much shorter than 18 months. I volunteer my services. I'm sure that other people in the room volunteer their services. I'd like to see commitments from the Common Council to specific actions that are going to be taken in a short period of time. Ideas about recapturing heat and taking care of this and that and doing all these other things, those are all very expensive. So we need to understand the impacts from a financial and capital perspective as we look at what the rate increases and other things will be going forward. So certainly interested in participating, very much interested in helping move that forward as fast as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
I've got 2 timers on me. I've got a bunch of little things here, but how do we change gears when we've been racing down the highway? Tesla comes to mind, and I'm a news junkie. I listen to the news. I've learned more tonight than by listening to endless talking on the radio. Tesla has a system where they've got battery charging stations all over the U.S. We've seen them in the back of Target. They're in these crazy places that you'll never see a Tesla charging. One day, cars will be charged there. One of the things that Tesla does offer, or they have thought about, or has been discussed, and I'm hardly the expert. I may talk like I'm somebody that knows it, but these specialists here that are far more familiar have so enlightened us. Tesla has suggested, or the battery car charging business has suggested, that the batteries that are in electric cars or hybrid cars be providing power to the grid at night when the cars are parked. Let's say from 7 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning. Now obviously we're not a city that's hosting a lot of Teslas, maybe a few Priuses for the taxi companies. You go to a big city and you'll see Teslas driving everywhere, some as cabs. They're $70,000 cars. You're not going to see a lot of Teslas in Plattsburgh. Now, if we had to have infrastructure to have a Tesla that was in Albany supplying power, that wouldn't happen. But it's something to think about. If there are other venues that we haven't even thought about until they were brought to our attention by these experts or these people that are so well versed, maybe there's an opportunity to provide power from rechargeable cars. A power station to recharge batteries. There was a company in Israel many years ago that failed, unfortunately, that instead of filling your tank with gas or charging your battery, you changed your battery at a service station. The company went bankrupt. It was called The Good Choice or The Good News or something, but they swapped batteries. And I have these minor issues. I guess I'll lower my tone. The Crete roof, maybe that could be paid for by a solar collection company that would supply power at the Crete. Maybe the Crete should be turned into a venue where we could operate these mining companies or blockchain companies. Bitcoin may be just taking advantage of a situation with Bitcoin miners, but the blockchain technology by IBM, by the hospitals, by some of these huge corporations, maybe they'd want to take over the Crete. We all know what the Crete is. It's in the paper often enough. It needs a new roof at $1 million. There's probably asbestos in that roof like there isn't any property over 50 years old. What else did I have here? Also the parking. We discussed parking meters in the city, having a smart parking. Now what if those smart meters, because things roll so quickly, phones do things we never even thought about except turn themselves off when you're in a meeting. What if the phones were designed to alert people that may be parked on the street when there's a snow ban after 2 a.m. If you're logged into the city's program, whatever parking in Plattsburgh, parking, whatever they call it, what if the phone could alert the person who's forgotten their car's parked on the street or parked in a certain part of the Durkee Street parking lot to move that car? Why can't we send an alert out, somewhat like an Amber Alert, but move your car alert? We've got the amber flashing lights, and people are getting tickets or towed, and it isn't necessarily in anybody's interest except the guy that's running the towing company. He'll have to make his money elsewhere. It's not fair. I haven't been towed, but that company that's designing it maybe needs a fresh idea like we here today. I could talk about wasted electricity from people's windows that are open. Boy, do I see a lot of those as a landlord. People's store windows that are cracked open. The city should be driving around, but I'll save it for next meeting. I think the Bitcoin and the mining and the blockchain is a far bigger issue. And I hope that the roundtable, when and if it happens in the near future, is open to the public. And we can all participate, or at least listen in, because there have been some fantastic ideas here. And we are on the cusp of possibly something new, and maybe it'll happen at the Creek. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know this is a little bit unusual, but I'd like to ask a question of the large Bitcoin producers. We've talked about voluntary reductions in your operations during points of time when we're pushed over the quota, and we're then all paying for it. Would you pledge to turn off your operations on those times, those few days a month in those critical months that could make such an important difference to your colleagues, neighbors, and ratepayers? That would go so far in helping to alleviate the pressure that some of our constituents are feeling on their electric bills.
The last thing we want to see is people have their electricity bills increased. That's not a part of being a good citizen here in the community. We view ourselves as being just as much a citizen as anybody else here. So the last thing we want to do is see people have their rates increased. In terms of the technicality of the question, I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you that all options are on the table as we seek to partner with the city.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Any other individuals, please come address the council on any issue of mutual concern.
Well, yes, but I wouldn't like to go and get up. Please, no, please. Okay. So, hi, I'm Naomi. So I came to Plattsburgh about 3 years ago, and honestly, it's been a little harsh because I came from Florida, Miami. So
usually people go the other direction.
So
I'm glad you're here.
it's kind of been a culture shock. So my question is, Mayor Reed, sorry, I'm a little nervous. What is being done in Plattsburgh to improve it so it becomes more attractive, exciting, and there's, you know, more things to do? Because I find it a bit dead.
It is, and obviously.
It's not Miami.
It's not, it won't be Miami. But I do think that there should be more things that could be done in order to improve it, make the downtown area more attractive. Our mall is dead, and, well, you know, even young people, I don't feel like it has that much to offer, except their Saturday nights at Retro Live or Naked Turtle when in season.
Well, I think you use the term even young people. I think actually it should be especially young people, because inevitably in our community people do retire and move to lower tax states, North and South Carolina and Florida. And the only people who are going to replace them are the younger people, the millennials. And we do need to have an attractive place for them to live, an attractive walking-oriented downtown. We need to have pedestrian walks and sculpture walks and art walks and open streets that are friendly for people, not just traffic, and we are working on that. If there's any good news, you've been here for only 3 years. It's a lot better than it was a decade ago, but we have a lot farther to go yet as well.
When I came, I wasn't even aware of how far away I was from New York City, and I deluded myself into thinking I'd be in New York City every weekend, but, you know.
There's Montreal. Oh, I'm not supposed to.
Thank you.
Hi, Mayor. Peter Regnier here. My wife and I own a number of properties all within the wards of the city, and we pay for some electricity and our tenants pay for others. I want to thank you for explaining the unique situation of the city. The report, the 44-page report, will not address the situation that we have in this town. And I think that understanding and not understanding Bitcoin is not the issue here. It is the usage of the electrical power and the expense being borne by myself, other property owners, other tenants, anyone who pays an electric bill in this city. And I don't believe that there can be a fair comparison drawn between Bitcoin miners and IBM's investment in Burlington. I don't get that connection. What I think, and I don't profess to speak for anyone but myself, but I have to believe that people agree with me when I say that when my tenants called me to ask me if there was something wrong with the electrical wiring in our buildings because their rates went up so dramatically, that's an issue. And I know that you understand this, but I really do want to thank you and bolster what you said.
by saying I believe a lot of people agree with what you just said, that the concern about exceeding that allocation for us, and to have we already pay a very high amount of taxes in the city, you know this. And although I don't believe that it really is an offset, that you really can't look at it and go, well, you pay high taxes, but the offset is lower power. I don't like that. I don't like that wording. Although it is a real thing. When the power goes up, joined with the higher taxes, the enticement to be involved in this city diminishes greatly. And if a corporation or an entity that employs 3 people is going to use the power that is for all of us, and that we all pay $40 or $50 more a month to support the power usage of that entity that is not IBM or another hospital, is a penalty to all of us in this city. So I don't think people understand fully, and you explained it well, about how the grid works and how buying electricity, and once you exceed it, then the quantum leap forward of the burden on all of us. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other individuals, please come address the council. Seeing none, I could entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilor Rensel, second by Councilor McFarland. Roll call.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Dowdle excused himself at 6:47. Councilor Ensel?
Yes.
Councilor McFarland?
Yes.
Councilor Pretzer excused himself at 6:47.
Thank you, folks, for coming.
Thank you. Mike.
One thing I meant to say, somebody thinks across your mind, leads into the punch. Fear.
Professor.
Plattsburgh and 18-month moratorium.
That's great.
I'm Mike Kelly. Before you leave, I just wanted to tell you that I really like what you had to say.
Take care. Thank you very much. Thanks for taking this.
I agree with you that Bitcoin has a very it's not going to be around.
Not designed to be around for long.
So, you have an idea of when it
Organize something to make it a more exciting place.
My opinion of it is